Hello everybody and welcome to Disney News Channel. And today we are going to do a Marvel ranking. And just to show you who the best movie content creator is, I will also be including the two Deadpool movies. Alright, without further ado, let's get started with Iron Man. Iron Man is a nice start to the MCU and doesn't do anything too big, but makes the big moments further on in the MCU mind-blowing. Iron Man's arc is a great one because of the great sense of pacing and small scenes between Tony and Pepper. The one thing I did not like about this movie is that I wish that Obadiah Stane was revealed as the villain earlier on in the movie instead of right before the climax. I feel this would have added a little bit more of a story and conflict to the movie. Now let's talk about Thor the Dark World. Thor the Dark World is one of the less good MCU movies and doesn't have much of a story outside of the world building for future MCU. My first problem I have to talk about is the extremely slow pace this movie has. It takes around 30 minutes for the story to get started, and the one thing that could potentially get exciting is exploring the villain's home is not explored until the last 30 minutes. Loki and Frigga, Thor's mom, have almost nothing to do, and so are completely pointless in this movie. This whole romance angle between Jane and Thor is shallow at best and feels tacked on to the story, since the romance angle is pushed aside for the relationship between Thor and Frigga, and since Frigga has nothing to do, her death means almost nothing to me. Now, let's talk about Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. I would not have this movie would have been acceptable if Marvel didn't lie to us about the movie and what we would see. Elements like the multiverse and the Illuminati feel added on for the sake of ratings and are hardly explored or explained beyond some explanation. The Illuminati has only one scene halfway through the movie and then dies, making this movie as a whole pointless, aside from one throwaway line about incursions. Captain Marvel is still not one of my favorite MCU movies, but it is still better than the last time I watched it. There was little to no conflict, and the villains don't make it to Earth until later, but the stuff on Earth between Carol and Nick Fury is really fun. However, I still have a few problems with this movie. The way they tell the story through flashbacks and files is pretty contrived and convenient. However, the flashbacks do fill in Carol's past, but are also very fun and action-packed. The other problem is that I feel Brie Larson was a little stiff and didn't feel like her heart was really in the MCU. Captain America, now let's talk about Civil War. This is another great example of what I expect from Marvel. This movie has one of the most interesting stories with how it plays with our expectations. Not just with heroes vs. heroes, but also with Tony wanting to sign the Accords while Captain America decides not to. This movie also makes the smart decision not to pick a side in the conflict, letting the audience pick a side just like the characters we love. Oh, sorry. This is actually supposed to be down here. Avengers Infinity War is a great movie and a great example of how to balance multiple storylines. This movie has 3 different plots, but during the final act, the 3 plots and all the characters of the plots come together to deliver one of the most insane and beautiful final acts of Marvel. This movie also has one of the most heartbreaking scenes in Marvel, with everyone disappearing and the scene where Star-Lord figures out that Thanos killed Gamora. Also, the whole thing with Thanos killing Gamora, him finding that out, that scene just works perfectly with everything he's been through in Guardians of the Galaxy and the sequel, and just feels so right for his character. Now let's grab Shang-Chi. This MCU movie is one of the very few great movies of Phase 4. Shang-Chi's characters all feel connected to each other and grounded to the point where you almost believe it's all real. The villain also has a special relationship to the heroes, and we learn about it early enough so that they can fully explore the plot. The sets are also stunning, and Talos feels distinctly Chinese. Now let's talk about one of my favorite MCU movies, Spider-Man No Way Home. Spider-Man No Way Home is how to do a multiverse movie correctly, with the fun cameos having at least an hour of screen time so they can play off each other and have meaningful interactions with the main characters. Unlike Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, where the cameos felt shoved in for the sake of popularity, these ones feel woven into the plot and continue their arcs from the previous movie. Especially with Andrew Garfield, the story of this movie is also heartbreaking, and I love how it builds on what Aunt May said in Spider-Man 2. To be a hero, you must be willing to give up what you want most of all. But this time, they add that you're going to be alright, which I really enjoyed. Next, let's talk about the Incredible Hulk. I don't really have anything to say on this movie. It is just a really boring and contrived movie that doesn't add anything to the MCU outside of the credits scene. For some reason, they decided to skip the part where Bruce gets his gamma radiation, makes it hard for us to empathize with him. I don't even remember his girlfriend's name because she's just so forgettable and hardly in it. Now let's grab Black Panther Wakanda Forever. This is an amazing movie and a great final salute to Chadwick Boseman. This movie has some great humor with its newest addition, Ree Williams. It just has 2 problems. I just have 2 problems with this movie. One, I feel the story drags a little bit in the middle when Shuri and Namor are talking about what happened to him. My other problem is that Evelyn Ross and Valentina didn't add anything to the story, and shouldn't have even appeared. Next, we're going to talk about Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. This is the worst MCU movie and doesn't even try that hard to be something special. This movie teaches us almost nothing about the quantum realm, and we spend the whole movie there. All we learn are that there are supposed to be things that are supposed to be taken as jokes. Quantumania also has no sense of conflict or stakes with the story or characters. Apparently, when Janet was in the quantum realm, she had a love interest with Krylo, but apparently he's evil now, and Janet and Hank never have a conversation about it that is longer than 10 seconds. The new characters also only get about one scene each, and then return for the final climax, like we are supposed to care about them. Yeah, and honestly, I just really wish that they made Kane a little more conflicted between his want to get out of the quantum realm and his love for Janet as well. Because right now he's kind of just a one note villain, one note stereotypical bad guy villain. Anywho, now we're going to talk about Werewolf by Night. The first special, Werewolf by Night, is a black and white classic horror special, and is the most different and unique thing from Marvel since Winter Soldier. Jack Russell, aka Werewolf by Night, is the main character, but feels sort of underdeveloped, and that goes for all the characters except for Elsa Bloodstone. But that is not the special's main goal. It is just trying to be a fun diversion until the next movie or show. And on that level, this special achieves that with flying colors and is a great introduction to the horror corner of the MCU. Now, the moment you have all been waiting for, Deadpool. And I'm sorry, but I just think Deadpool is a great movie, but I'm still not a big fan of Deadpool talking to the camera, and I feel like it takes me out of the Marvel Universe. The third wall breaks also make the emotional moments less impactful. I don't have too much to say about this movie, but wait until I talk about Deadpool 2, since that is where the franchise really got started for me. Shooby-da-boo. Captain America: The First Avengers is one of the most heartwarming and compelling stories of the MCU. In this movie, it doesn't really flesh out the MCU too much, but Captain America is just such a compelling character, and his arc is perfect, that I don't really care about this movie not expanding on the MCU. Peggy is also more than just Steve's girlfriend, but also her own compelling character, who has some great lines with him. I feel sort of conflicted about Black Widow, because on one hand, I feel the story is pretty contrived, and her parents' redemption were completely underdeveloped, only coming in during the final battle. And yes, Yelena is hilarious and an amazing character. There was also some great potential with making Black Widow's parents sympathetic. However, their backstories are not developed nearly enough for me to feel for them. But the final battle in the Red Room was pretty darn exciting and fun, with all with all the action and things going on. Now, I have an unpopular opinion here. I know I'm gonna get hated in the comments for this, but I actually think the first Ant-Man movie is pretty good. It has a great story about second chances and redemption. This movie is not the most grand or important movie in the MCU, but makes up for it with its amazing characters that are just so much fun to hang out with. This movie also has its fair share of emotional beats, with Scott stealing the Ant-Man suit in the first place so he could pay child support and see his daughter again, and then sacrificing himself at the end with the same suit. However, I wish the villain was a little stronger, and the movie had a little more subtlety with their emotional beats. Okay, now we need to talk about one of the worst MCU movies, since we're getting a little too positive up there. I can basically describe Thor: Love and Thunder in 2 sentences. The movie never takes itself remotely seriously, and the whole plot with Jane Foster getting cancer is completely underdeveloped and goes nowhere. Thor also feels off and delusional this time around, with him talking to his weapon. And in the other movies, Thor is supposed to be the smart one. Okay, now we can go back to being positive. The Avengers movie is basically where the MCU really gets going. And as good as this movie is, there are a lot of other MCU movies that are better. Every character has a great role to play, and just like in real life, it is fun to watch these guys come together for the first time. This is also the movie where I really started to love Iron Man as a character. And it was nice to see him take his first step on his arc. This movie also has one of my favorite endings with Nick Fury's monologue about why they need the Avengers and how dangerous they are. There we go. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 has a paranormal story about Rocket Raccoon, and there's a fascinating send-off for this version of the Guardians. Rocket Raccoon is the star of this movie, and unlike the other 2 movies, where I found this character to be a little bit annoying, they really made me empathize with Rocket, and was one of my favorite characters this time around. The other characters, however, don't have as much of a journey to go on, and kind of just felt like they were there. They also have some signs of Phase 4 cliches, as I call them, with the main villain, who was amazing, dying at the end. However, if they can take my least favorite Guardian and turn him into my favorite, then they are probably doing something right. Alrighty then, let's finish off these Deadpool movies with a big bang, because Deadpool 2 is yet another great movie and has a much better mix between humor and heart. The part that stole the show for me, was the final act, and Julian Dustin as Rusty Coleman, who delivers his lines with such passion and emotion that you really do believe him when he says he wants to kill the headmaster. Okie dokie. Time for another episode of Unpopular Opinions. Because we're gonna have to talk about Eternals next. And this movie is actually, interestingly enough, this movie is one of the lowest rated Marvel movies on Rotten Tomatoes. And yes, I do believe this story has a few problems that could have been fixed simply by making it a TV series instead. However, there are still some things I really like about this movie. And that is the mature story where the characters learn that everything they were told was a lie. The chemistry between the characters is also great. It makes the action in this movie really good. Icarus as the twist villain was pretty cool, but I wish his reveal happened a little bit earlier in the movie and not right before the final battle. Now I need to talk about some of the problems. First of all, Sprite as a character makes no sense to me. They said that Sprite went to check on Cersei after the Eternals broke up, but it was later revealed that he was envious of Cersei. Also, I wish that Dane Whitman tagged along for the story, since the camera guy was also able to join, so why couldn't Dane Whitman also join? Anywho. Now, let's grab another Iron Man movie. This time let's talk about the third movie, if I can find it. Here it is. Iron Man 3 is the worst Iron Man movie in the trilogy, but still has one thing going for it. The one thing I like about the movie was Tony Stark and his journey, mourning he doesn't need the suit. However, the rest of the stuff is pretty bad for different reasons. Penny and Rhodey, two of the most important people in Iron Man's journey, have almost nothing to do in this movie until the end, and Pepper is instead the damsel in distress for the final climax. The villain in this movie is also a letdown, with no further development besides that opening where Tony was mean to him. His plan also doesn't make any sense, since if he was trying to get back at Tony, then why not do something that would specifically hurt him instead of planning to decimate the entire Earth? Now let's grab Avengers Age of Ultron next. Avengers Age of Ultron is another bad movie that has a few things going for it, but made insignificant by something else. The opening action scene with the Avengers trying to get Loki's scepter is pretty climactic and fun. This movie also gets some points for me for being one of the key pieces to Avengers Infinity War. However, that is where the good stuff ends. The Avengers dynamic in the first movie is no longer there and feels kind of forced. Ultron is a one-note villain who just, like Iron Man 3, wants to kill everyone for no reason. They tried to get away with this by saying he's a robot, but for me, that is just lazy when he could have been something so much more than just a robot. Now, let's go back to something positive. I don't know if this is the same for you guys, but if this movie didn't make you cry, or at least feel something in your heart, then you do not deserve Marvel, and you do not deserve to watch these movies. Because this movie is just so fucking good. This is a perfect movie, and even though it is not number one with the story and characters working together, I absolutely love all the characters, and they have such a beautiful, believable family dynamic. And unlike other movies, where there's already a family, we get to see this family grow and come together. The one character I felt was a little bit annoying was Rocket, since he is a big asshole the whole movie, and we don't really know why, since, unlike the other Guardians, we don't get his story until Volume 3. But literally, everything else about this movie is phenomenal. Captain America, the Winter Soldier, has some of the best quick-paced action in the whole MCU. Black Widow is a great added wrinkle to the story and plays off Captain America's more old-fashioned methods very well. This movie also has one of my favorite MCU lines, "I'm with you to the end of the line," and even comes back in the final battle between Cap and Bucky, with Cap, and it melts my heart every time. The story, as well, as we all know, is amazing, and the final act has some of the best line delivery and action. Yeah, that's good. Falcon and the Winter Soldier is a great show with its fun action and great character development. The show's action is quick-paced and engaging, but doesn't have much emotional weight behind it. This show also has one of the best new side characters with Isaiah Bradley and his story about being a forgotten super soldier. And I wish there was more of him. The villain Coley Morgenflower is a great villain, and a fascinating one at that, with the idea of exploring what happened to everyone who came back from the blip. The story is pretty basic, and doesn't do too much, but doesn't bother me since this is one of the first projects of the saga. Okay, now let's talk about Iron Man 2. Iron Man 2 takes forever for something to happen, and when it does, it only happens with one scene. The main sequence that comes to mind is the scene with Tony's father, and how much he really did care for Tony. However, I feel it could have been stronger if we were shown this instead of hearing it from him. Now, let's talk about Thor. Thor has some great characters, and some I don't care for. It also has a story that has some parts I like and some parts I don't. The stuff between Loki, Thor, and their family was phenomenal. But I wish Loki and his father had a bigger role after Thor got sent off. The whole love story between Jane and Thor feels shallow and unreal since we never get to see who Jane is and we never learn why Thor likes her. I love how Loki seemed to really love Thor at first until his father told him he was adopted. Because of this, I don't like the reveal that Loki was playing Thor the whole time. I wish they could have done something a little more complicated with Loki's character and actually made him feel a little conflicted but always feeling the need to get rid of Thor because it's something, the throne is something he deserves. Anywho, now let's talk about the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special. The Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special is an absolute joy that knows what it is and does it perfectly. This special is absolutely hilarious and heartwarming that isn't even trying to take its ridiculous, disturbing story seriously. The opening 2D animation looks amazing and incredibly detailed. The new Christmas song is amazingly ridiculous and has some incredibly hilarious lyrics. Also, after being mentioned in Guardians of the Galaxy, we finally get to see Kevin Bacon, who adds a lot of humor to the story and fits in with the Guardians and the cosmic tone perfectly. Now we need to talk about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 has two parts for me, ironically enough. The part with Peter and his dad was absolutely heartbreakingly beautiful, but the side plot with Groot and my least favorite character, Rocket, was hard to watch since everything that happened to him and Groot was Rocket's fault, including getting captured. Mantis is a great addition to the Guardians, and I cannot wait for further development from her. Yeah, I think we're in between those two movies. Anyway, Black Panther has a great story that is very grounded and has just the right amount of depth. Killmonger is a great villain with loads of depth and relatability, to the point where you're actually starting to side with him and what he is trying to do. T'Challa also has some great interactions with his sister, Shuri, and you can automatically tell how close they are, with how they are joking around. Now we need to talk about WandaVision. WandaVision is a fun sitcom-style show that is a lot of fun and a decent start to the next saga. This show is the most different Marvel project since Winter Soldier, especially the first two episodes being black and white. However, I do have some problems with the show. My first problem is that it sets up a lot of really interesting things, but doesn't have any payoff aside from a joke. The other problem is that I wish that Billy and Tommy had more opportunities to use their powers. Other than that, the show is really quite harmless It can be a fun show if you don't set your expectations for a mind-blowing experience. Ant-Man and the Wasp opens with an adorable scene between Scott and Cassie, with Scott playing a spy game, and that adorableness goes for all their scenes. The story feels like it's trying to do way too much with balancing the story between Cassie and Scott and trying to bring home Hope's mother, while also trying to fit in the story of Bill Foster and Ghost. And because the story is so stuffed, the villain Sonny Breach feels like a one-note villain that only has 2 scenes. The stuff with the FBI does not have any stakes in the plot since, again, just like Sonny, they have nothing to do. However, this movie is still a fun time that will no doubt make you laugh. Okay. Now, we need to talk about Thor Ragnarok. I feel this was a real turning point for the MCU, where the MCU started caring more about humor and not enough about telling a very deep, rich story with these great characters. Because Thor Ragnarok is pretty pointless aside from Asgard being destroyed, and it's exactly what I hate about Marvel and the Thor trilogy. This movie is too funny for me, and I cannot for its life, cannot take anything remotely seriously, just like the other Thor movies. However, with the incredible ending that tries to be a little more serious, I would have to put it in fun. Actually, no, not fun. I really don't like this movie. It's going in the bottom tier. Avengers Endgame is... Oh, damn. Forgot. Avengers Endgame is one of the craziest MCU movies I've ever seen. With with everything they have set up since 2008 finally coming together. Iron Man and Captain America end their journey in such a perfect place that, just like Civil War, is a complete change in expectations. The first half of this movie is a fun game of spot the MCU reference, as they go back to the previous MCU episodes. The last half of the movie is just one crazy action sequence with every single character the MCU has introduced coming together to stop Thanos. Now we need to talk about Loki. Loki is a great show and a great example of trying to make a story focused on a character while also pushing the MCU story forward. The new characters, like Sylvie and Mobius, fit perfectly within the show's mysterious and unknown tone. And seeing Loki's relationship between the two is heartwarming to see. The last episode blew my mind with the reveal of He Who Remains, also known as Kane, and I absolutely loved his smooth and laid-back performance and personality. This show is just the right amount of humor and stakes to the plot. Stakes. Anywho, enough of the jokes. We need to talk about Hawkeye next. Hawkeye is a fun Christmas show that I would say is on par with Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Yeah, that's on par with Falcon and the Winter Soldier. This show doesn't have anything to do with tying the movies together, but does a great job at telling its own contained story. Although Kate Bishop's powers are basically the same as Hawkeye, they at least did a good job making her storyline different. As Hawkeye, they at least did a good job making her storyline different from her, and then taking over the Hawkeye name at the end. My one problem with the show is that for a show named Hawkeye, we don't really get a lot of screen time with him, nor do we get his perspective. I find it hard to believe that Hawkeye is suffering from PTSD since he acts like the same cold and distant person he always was. Doctor Strange is a movie with a lot of potential for drama, but just doesn't lean hard enough or expand enough on some of the concepts this movie has. It also has some incredible CGI and creative fight scenes. Okay, now we need to talk about Spider-Man Far From Home. And I think we could put that one right there. Spider-Man Far From Home is the weakest one in the Spider-Man trilogy, but is by no means bad. And is still pretty good. This movie is kind of the boring middle chapter of the trilogy, and only really exists as the epilogue of the Infinity Saga. However, I absolutely love Peter's character arc and how it so naturally picks things up after Endgame. The one big problem is how the side characters have almost nothing to do, and the only character you need to pay attention to are Mysterio and Pietro. Okay. What If has some great episodes, but because of the multiverse angle, I feel the series is missing a main character. Also, because each episode is something different, some of the episodes feel rushed, like the zombie episode, and how they could have done so much more, and it just sort of ended. However, the individual stories are nice, and the show does have some great animation. Okay, now we'll talk about Miss Marvel. We'll put Miss Marvel right. No, we'll put it right here. the best way to describe Miss Marvel is a show that is a lot of fun and does a great job fleshing out their world, but the main characters fall short. Miss Marvel has a great beginning with its down-to-earth tone and simple origin story with no big specials. However, the second half tries to put this big complex story into 2 episodes that just needs more time to fully explore everything. Then the finale feels very rushed as they try to force some conflict into the story by giving Comrade powers. However, the season does have a lot of heart and some amazing animation that helps us see Miss Marvel's perspective. Alright, next, Moon Knight. Moon Knight is a show that has quite a few problems. Firstly, the show has the slowest pace, with the story not even fully happening until halfway through the season. The series also feels very kiddish, with how it just skips over the more mature parts, with having Mark black out. I know Marvel said it wants to go dark, but the show just doesn't commit and instead resists these darker elements. Okay, next up, we need to talk about She-Hulk. Marvel does have some bad movies. However, She-Hulk is by far the worst and the only one I never want to watch again. This show cannot take itself seriously, making the stakes of the story pointless. The story also has way too many diversions from the narrative. She-Hulk's origin is it's the only thing I really liked, and was aside from Daredevil. Even if he had nothing to do, it is still nice to see him again. Okay, let's finish this off here with these last 2 projects. Spider-Man Homecoming, that's a really, really great movie. I thought Iron Man was a really nice addition. And, of course, Ned is absolutely hilarious in this movie. Wish we could have gotten a little more of him. But other than that, I don't really have too much to say. It's just a really solid movie. And let's just finish this off here. Secret Invasion. It's interesting, for a show called Secret Invasion, a lot of the show doesn't really focus on the invasion and is kind of just Nick Fury just screwing around. But honestly, I wish this show could have been so much better, because I've read the comic series of Secret Invasion, and it is one of the coolest things I've ever read. But unfortunately, this, again, just like Moon Knight, this series just doesn't really seem interested in that dark story, and just sort of decides to resist it. Alrighty then, that will do it for this ranking. But before we say goodbye, I'm just gonna move my camera over here. Oh, never mind, you can't see that. You can't see the last one. Okay then let's just wrap this thing up real quick. Marvel, as we can see from the ranking here, Marvel does have some bad movies, Actually, no, yeah. You can see from that although it does have its fair share of some bad movies, especially later on with the Multiverse Saga. However, I do still, according to this, it does still have its fair share of amazing projects, and I just can't wait to see what comes next. Even if it isn't the greatest movie or project series, I'm just excited to learn more about this world. Anywho, that is all for now, everybody. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, and check out my link tree with with access to all my other platforms.